Hello everybody and welcome to Hankley Common Golf Course in Surrey. Now I've actually come to play golf, just happened to just park nearby. What I'm going to try and do today is none of my shoe-offs. Now, as I've been sort of struggling to recover from calf injury, I haven't been able to obviously run as fast as I would have liked to in my sort of sub-3 attempt. So what I do today is I think I'm going to try some different shoes and see which ones work out at a slightly slower pace. So rather than sort of going for like a sub-7 minute mile pace, I'll go run about sort of an 8:30 pace, 8 minute pace, and see which one of the shoes works best. So it might be going to be an indication of which shoes would work best for, say, like your 3-hour, 4-hour marathon runner. So let's go and have a look at the shoes. Okay, so here we are. Here's the 5 shoes. I'm going to start off with the ASICS Novablast. They're the shoes that I've been wearing the most recently. Finding them great for recovery runs. They're just so well cushioned. Then I'm moving into the Hoka Rocket X, which I've recently got. I've only done, well, 1 or 2 runs in them so far, so I'll be keen to give those a proper go. And I've got the Adizero Adios Pro, another new shoe that I've recently got. You might have seen my quick look at that one last weekend. And then we've got the RC Elite, another new shoe that I haven't really taken too far. And if I get that far, we've got the Alphaflys for a final test. I've identified about a 1.5 mile circuit from here, which I hope is fairly flat on the road, because this is rather muddy quite where I am. And we'll see how we go. So we'll check out heart rate, and I'll put the stride power meter on, see what we can see. I'll try and run the first one sort of how I feel, and then see if I can run the other one similarly, just to sort of get an impression of how they feel at this sort of slower pace. Okay, let's get on with it. Hi, so we're out in the first run of the Novablast. Quite a nice little circuit, this one. Rather quiet. We've not to encounter too many cars. Rather slowly so far. It's about at a 9 minute pace, but we'll use this one in the Novablast as a bit of a warm-up. See you later. So back from the Novablast run, we did about an 8:30 pace there. It was sort of felt a bit stiff, but a nice little cruise. Novablast is so good for sort of like a recovery run, sort of easy runs, because just so much sponge. But they certainly don't feel like they want to make you run fast. But yeah, when you've warmed up, you certainly can do. Right, now into the Rocket X's here, which have got the most ridiculously long laces, so I'll have to wrap them round. In fact, these laces are so long, I might need to go and cut them, I think. I'll maybe another video of how I used to cut my laces and then risk the wrath of Mrs. G by fraying the ends with a match. Right, let's get on with the Rocket X then. Oh, by the way, as it feels like it's warmed up in inverted commas, it's about 5 or 6 degrees, I think. But so I've taken my tights off, just feel a bit easy to run. I don't really like running in tights if I can. I remember last winter I didn't rain tights the whole winter, so I've already been out in tights already. But it is December, I suppose. Right, let's get on with it. So I just started the Rocket X run. I can instantly feel the lighter weight. I'm not sure if I really like the style of Hoka shoes. They always feel the base is too wide for me. I've got a very narrow foot. Some people sort of say that the Hoka shoes are narrow, but I find that I've had to pull the laces really tight here, which is probably why I've got so much excess lacing. I think they feel a bit more spongy than the Carbon X for sure, but I need to do a bit more longer running in them to see. I'm not sure that this is going to be the ideal shoe for a slow pace. Right, let's crack on. Just a quick observation here on the Rocket X. I've got quite a lot of room here for my toes, but I'm feeling a bit of pressure point on my little toe there. So that bit there is really roomy, but it really narrows down. I've got this synced up, so I was kind of feeling that on my toe there, which wasn't great. So run down in the Rocket X, must say I wasn't overly enamoured with that shoe. Maybe just something about Hoka's that I saw there, that the fit is a bit odd. They sort of feel narrow in one way, and yet there's sort of a bit of a pinch point there, and I have to really tie them down quite a lot. So yeah, and I think there's also the 5mm drop. I think I'm just not more used to the 10mm drops. So I'm moving on to the Adios Pro now, and we'll see how they fare. About halfway in the run in the Adios Pros, I certainly feel that the higher stack height in these over the Rocket X and the higher drop having much more to my appeal. I feel like I'm rocking back a bit at this pace though in these shoes though, which is maybe slightly counterproductive, but Yeah, not too bad. I'm not getting that hot spot on my right little toe that I was getting in the Hokas, so even though they're probably, if anything, I've got these narrower. Right, report back at the end. Okay, the Adios Pro done. Yeah, not too bad. I think the highest stack height there, and it's quite sort of a firm high stack height. It's a bit weird. It's kind of rather different to the next percent because that feels much more squidgy. And this Adios Pro feels like sort of wearing like a flap like twice over. It's kind of a weird sensation. So it's sort of quite spongy, but it's not that soft. So you get a bit of responsiveness. I felt like I was running a bit towards the back of my heels. Don't know, it's just because I'm running so slowly, maybe a bit unnaturally, because I'm finding quite a lot of stiffness in my thighs at the moment. I think I'm just getting used to running again. So now I put on the RC Elites, and I finally got some matching socks, even if it's not the right company, but needs must. So one thing putting back these RC Elites on, they feel the most comfortable shoe just for standing around in. They the Adios Pro maybe slightly too small for me, and a bit of a weird feeling on foot. I mean, they're quite nice cinched down. The Hokas, I just don't. I don't really have much of a love affair for Hokas, do I? Maybe I'm just slagging them off unnecessarily, but it just wasn't like my most pleasant of experience to run in those. So I'm hoping for a bit better than the RC Elite, because these are going to be quite soft. But there's a difference between walking around in a shoe and actually running in them. So right, let's get on with this and see you later. Bye. So running along in the RC Elite, and I think so far, I think I'd have to say that these are probably my favourite for this sort of run. They feel the most sort of comfortable shoe. There's quite a lot of room in the toe box. Maybe also a bit too much room. I think I need to possibly tighten up the front of the shoes a bit. But nice and comfortable, nice and squishy, but not too squishy. I think at this pace, I'm kind of finding that more helpful than in the Adios Pro. So yeah, promising so far. So we got the RC Elite done. I feel quite nice to run in, as I said, but so when I looked at the watch, I was actually a bit slower than I was in the Adios Pro. Now, whether that's just because I was getting a bit tired, slow by about 15 seconds. So, and then towards the end of that run, I think the sort of soft feeling then was maybe starting to feel like it was maybe a feeling of slightly sinking. So initially it felt really comfortable, but then as time went on, would that feel the same after a 10-mile run as opposed to 1.5-mile run? But yeah, interesting. But I think just more comfortable to run in. So I think if it was a training shoe, slower pace, then that just felt like a better option than the Adios Pro and the Rocket X. And obviously the Novablast is a training option anyway. So right, we've got the last shoe now. And I'm still colour coordinated with my yellow socks. This time of course in the Alphafly. Just about enough day life to get this one done. I must say these Alphaflys feel very different from all the other shoes put together. Even the Novablast has quite a high stack, but there's nothing really quite the same as putting these things. It feels like you're wearing sort of boots when you're just walking along. And then you sort of like get going, you spring along. I had rated these my second favourite behind the next percent. I decided not to use the next percent today because A, I can't wear every shoe going, and I wanted to give these a test with one from each brand and concentrate on the ones that I hadn't really given much attention to so far. Right, so let's get this final run done and report back later. Okay, very quick one because you probably can't see me. So I finished the Alphafly. Not too bad, they just feel a bit heavy though for that sort of run. I mean, they're probably the heaviest shoe on test. That and the Adios Pro are very similar. I felt sort of the clumpiness, but I think the speed was all right. I think that the fastest of those was probably the Adios Pro, but there's an element that I'm probably getting a bit tired. So let's get back indoors and I'll discuss the findings so far. But I think the summary was that the RC Elite probably felt the most comfortable to run in, but wasn't actually the fastest result. So that in itself brings a conundrum. The one I liked the least was definitely the Rocket X. And I think the Novablast, had it been warmed up, would have done pretty well at those paces as well. So let's see more when we get back inside. Okay, see you later. Bye. So hi, I'm back indoors now. Just a quick reminder of what we did here. I parked near the green and checkered dots here and then ran on this sort of rectangular loop, which is pretty flat. The gradients in this diagram rather exaggerate any gradients that there were, and hardly really felt any climbs at all, which is kind of largely why I chose this circuit. And it's all tarmac course, bit wet underfoot, but it wasn't raining and I didn't find any problems with any of the shoes on the slippage. Total distance of 1.52 on the segment. The actual distance I measured to about 1.55 or 2.5k. So it was a good little effort, and let's have a look at the stats. So here we are, is my normal spreadsheet, and I've got the 5 runs here on the course that I've just shown you, 2.5k or 1.55 miles. So I started off in the ASICS Novablast, went onto the Hoka only Rocket X, onto the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro, bit of a mouthful, and then the New Balance Fuelcell RC Elite, not getting any shorter, is it? Then finally it was the Nike Air Zoom Alphafly Next Percent, or something like that. These names are getting ever bigger, aren't they? So I didn't actually do any warm-up for this one because the paces are pretty much dictated by my current sort of combination of fitness and the fact that my calf isn't far from completely healed. So I'm still being rather cautious. And around about an 8-minute miling is probably about the fastest I've done outdoors so far. So it was actually good to sort of feel like I was running reasonably well. As I didn't do any warm-up, the Novablast one was definitely the slowest, but interestingly the heart rates were pretty similar. So let's go through them in more detail. So I started off with the Novablast pretty much running as I felt, and ended up with an average of 8:25 pace. And then my average heart rate was 125 with a maximum of 132. The other ones, I think just naturally I was a bit more warmed up. I'm not sure that I was really putting in any more effort. Then the Rocket X, a good 30 seconds faster. And the average pace of 8:04. Interestingly, the average heart rate went up by 2 beats and the max by 1. So it was maybe a bit of heart rate drift just getting warmed up there. It certainly felt easier in terms of actually speed with the Rocket X, but it wasn't a shoe that I particularly enjoyed. I think a combination of the relatively sort of firm ride and the lower drop just didn't feel like it was a particularly enjoyable ride for me. And I had that sort of pinch point on my right little toe that I showed in the video. So I think of these 5 shoes, that's definitely the one I would least liked. But I think I'll need to look at that one in a bit more detail when I'm a bit faster, because I think it's not really designed for this speed. But the purpose of this video really was to see which one of these are the best for these more casual speeds and whether it's actually worth wearing any of them for this sort of speed. So then moved on to the Adios Pro. And I was fractionally quicker there. In fact, that turned out to be the quickest run. It wasn't really an intentional thing to actually try and make any one quicker than the other one. In fact, I was trying to rerun these pretty similar, but just the way it turned out. The Adios Pro just sort of instantly felt nicer on to wear than the Rocket X. An interesting sort of foam. It sort of like felt sort of a combination of being, was it firm, was it soft? And it was a bit of a weird sensation. It's quite different to the sort of the Nike ones in that it's not as squidgy and you don't really get that sort of bounce back. But it was a nice sort of feeling. And I certainly preferred it to the lower stack Adizero Pro. And so it can't have actually done too badly there. I think when I actually, that maximum heart rate there of 137, was largely when I worked out, actually when I pulled out the camera to talk to the GoPro for a little bit, I think it actually jumped up about 5 beats. So I think that maximum heart rate there is a bit deceptive. And then we moved on to the RC Elite, which I mentioned in the video, was the shoe that I felt the most comfortable on foot just to walk around in. And then I started running and I noticed that perhaps there was a bit too much room in the toe box and might need to sort of slightly tighten up the top end of the shoe. But it certainly felt quite nice, and it's pretty the most sort of like a normal sort of traditional standard lightweight trainer. I can't say that I really felt the plate in any of these shoes. Maybe I'm just sort of getting more used to now the plate in them. But what was interesting there, that maybe I was just getting tired, but even though I felt like I was sort of having a nice run, I ended up running a lot slower in them. I mean, there's a slightly lowering of the heart rate as a result, but so that made me a bit more testing to do on that, because although it's quite a nice shoe to run in, if it doesn't actually produce the speed, then it rather defeats the object. And also I did notice sort of after about a mile, it being quite a soft shoe, but not a particularly high stack shoe, then maybe there was an element that it was starting to feel a bit harder working them, because I noticed before in the TC version that it is such a soft foam, the Fuelcell, that after a while sometimes it almost feels like it's working against you a bit. But certainly a nice run for a training run. And then I put the Alphaflys on at the end, and they did feel like I was sort of cursing the extra weight of these, because the Alphafly is the heaviest of these shoes, other than the Novablast, which I don't really count. I just did that as a sort of a control. Although the Adios Pro is actually a very similar weight to the Alphafly, but the Alphafly actually does feel heavier on foot than the Adios Pro. I think it just was the clumpy nature of the Alphafly. But having said that, you can't really argue with the time there, and the heart rate didn't really change at all from the previous one. So yeah, I think all in all, I'd say that the Adios Pro and the RC Elite are perhaps the 2 shoes that I'd most favour for sort of doing a longish run without sort of going flat out. But whether I'd actually use them for a race is a bit different. You know, if I was sort of going a bit slower, because I think it looks like the Alphafly could be the one that would keep you going the longest. And if it was, as long as it was a course that had lots of straights and wasn't too hilly, then that may be the one. But I think I'd already discount the Rocket X from being a shoe that doesn't really like to go slowly. And I'll need to see whether indeed it actually likes to go fast for me, because it's the third Hoka shoe I've had now, and I haven't really liked any of them so far, so it's not really a good sign, is it? And the Novablast is such a good sort of recovery type easy day shoe that if you want to pick up the pace, then you can. So having a quick look at the other metrics, all the powers are pretty similar. Obviously the power jumped up a bit and I was going a bit faster. The air power seemed to be behaving itself today, whether it's 1% or 2%. Then these might have been 1.5%. So I think that all those are pretty similar. There wasn't much wind out today. It was just a cold day. That's why I started off in tights and also in gloves, and eventually took the gloves off. But I had a long sleeve sort of thin top on. The cadence was obviously lowest when I was going the slowest. And interestingly, in the Alphafly, it dropped a bit on the last one there. I think the vertical oscillation and the ground contact time were interesting, because in the shoes with the biggest sponge in them, which is clearly the Alphafly, then probably the Novablast and the Adios Pro, you see I had a slightly higher VO in those than I did the lower stack ones like the Rocket X and the RC Elite. So I thought that was quite interesting that actually you almost sort of see the VO in the metrics compared to the stack height of the shoe. Ground contact time, not such sure I can see so much interesting in there. The RC Elite was a bit higher for some reason, not quite sure why that is. Although in the Stride version, it's actually gone down a bit. Not sure I can read too much into the ground contact time. Ground contact time balance, I think that's just showing that I'm still being a bit cautious on my right dodgy leg, because I'm leaning over to the left a bit there on every single run, aren't I? So that's something I need to watch for. And the leg spring stiffness, I never really understood that metric at all, really. I can't really understand any of those ones, but I just put them down there in case anyone wants to comment on them. So yeah, what did I think overall about these runs? Well, I think going as well about 8-minute pace, then as I said, the Rocket X I'll discount. The Adios Pro and the RC Elite weren't too bad. I think I sort of preferred the actual initial feel of the RC Elite, but maybe over a longer run the Adios Pro would come out, although it was a bit of an odd shoe to run in, and again I'll be looking forward to running it fast in these ones to see which one is my favourite for that. And the Alphafly again is a bit of an odd shoe. You feel like a bit of a fraud running along an 8-minute mile pace, and the shoe's sort of designed for sort of sub 5 pace. But I think that's the thing with all of these carbon plated shoes, because they're kind of designed with elite athletes in mind, and here I am running sort of 3 minutes slower than, you know, even a sort of a good British standard runner running sort of 2:10 pace, running about 5-minute miles, and the best guys running comfortably faster than that. So it's interesting that how these shoes, do they actually work for us sort of slower athletes, as it were, more normal amateur athletes? Well, I think, yeah, the answer is they do. I mean, certainly I was a bit faster than I was in the Novablast. Admittedly, I was a bit more warmed up then. But yeah, the takeaway from this, I think the RC Elite and the Adios Pro are ones that I'd probably be looking to take a bit further. Maybe I'll do another test with a bit of a longer run to see how they feel there, because it's obviously a bit difficult to tell after a mile and a half, because if a shoe is sort of uncomfortable, then, you know, that's not really quite long enough to see how it's going to stand up in terms of a marathon shoe. Anyway, I think it showed that all these do sort of work at slower speeds, and hope you found this interesting, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Oh, and if you can potentially look to hit the subscribe button, it might be most appreciated. I don't normally ask, but it's always nice to get a few more subscribers. So I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Okay, bye then.